in this time, I think for Black women to see through the lens of, as writers and illustrators. And so it's very exciting. Congrats.
Thank you. Same here. This is actually your second picture book. Can you tell us a little bit about your first one, Firebird, and what you learned while writing that brought you to this one?
Yeah, I was so grateful for the opportunity that I had to work with Christopher Myers, who I did Firebird with. Beautiful, beautiful illustrations, and so different from Bunheads. But it was a completely different approach. Christopher sought me out, and I was kind of shocked by it. I had written my memoir, and a couple of years later, Chris came and said, "I would love to do a picture book with you." And it was kind of like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was something I would ever venture into. And the process was really, him just wanting to hang out and get to know me before we came up with a concept together. So it was really a beautiful collaboration. And he would just, watch my rehearsals. He hung out a lot with me and my mentor, Raven Wilkinson, who has since passed. But that's where the idea of Firebird came from, was him watching this relationship I had with Raven, and this older ballerina that, as a Black woman in the 1950s, dancing in an all-white company, one of the major companies in the United States, and seeing how she was guiding me and showing me the ways. And so it was just an unbelievable experience. And the friendship I built with Christopher to this day, is so strong because of Firebird, but very different from Bunheads. This was something that I've had in the works for about 5 years. So.
Wow. I mean, it's such a beautiful book, and it really makes the world of ballet come alive. When you were a kid, did you ever read books about ballet that inspired you?
No, I grew up, just because I was in a single parent home, and a lot of the time it was just survival mode, not a lot of stability or security. And so extracurricular activities, which I don't like using that word when it comes to art, because it should be a part of our curriculum in schools. But that was not something that, was a part of my life. Even, something as simple as my mom buying us books, it was pretty much what was at school and what we had to read. So ballet was so far from my world, my realm. I'd never heard classical music before, or seen dance really in a structured way. The most I'd seen was in music videos on BET and MTV. So I didn't really have anything that even allowed me the possibility to imagine. I remember, books like Where the Wild Things Are, and really being able to use my imagination in such a beautiful way, which art is. And it definitely, I think, introduced me to the world of just being able to create visually, and writing became an escape for me before dance.
Right. You kept journals, right?
Yes, that was such a big part of me expressing myself. I was such an introverted child, and again, being the fourth of 6 children, I just didn't really have a big presence or voice between all the chaos and again, the instability at home. And writing became something that was the first thing I feel like I experienced that was artistic to me in a way. And so I started journaling when I was about maybe 11 or 12, and I've kept every single one of them. And that was really great when I wrote my memoir, to be able to pull from all of those journals and actually pluck out moments in time that were so vividly written, which I'm so grateful that I had. But once dance came into my life, it just kind of took off, and I grew so much in terms of my ability to create, and my writing skills became even better.
That's amazing. I know this is a very basic question, but I think it's an important one to answer. Can you tell us why ballet dancers are called bunheads, and why you chose it as the title for the book?
Yeah. Well, it's a term of endearment. It's something that, in the dance community, for instance, in New York City, I live on the Upper West Side, which they call it the dance belt because, you have Lincoln Center, the Metropolitan Opera House, you have New York City Ballet and ABT who perform up here. You have Juilliard and the School of American Ballet. There's so much dance. But if you walk down the street, you can spot a bunhead a mile away. You'll see them with their tights on underneath their clothes and their buns, their tight buns on their head. And it's really, I think, this thing that represents their commitment and dedication and love for what they do, and often don't want to take their buns out. So we call them bunheads. But I see it as, this beautiful kind of eclectic misfit group of kids that are from all different walks of life in this book that come together and find this commonality and joy and love through ballet and in the studio, and to be able to see the differences that each one of them have, but how they learn from each other's differences, and the relationships that are developed, I think, are so beautiful to depict, because it's often not that way in film and in television when it comes to ballet, just over just many generations of ballet television and film being created, where there's a lot of negativity and negative tropes connected and attached to it. So I really wanted to show this positive experience that I had, and I know a lot of my peers have had as well, and all that you can gain by being a part of an art form like ballet.
It's so interesting because you talked about seeing ballet in film and TV, and I can only imagine that watching it as the artist that you are, sometimes you're just like, nope. One of the things that really strikes me about Bunheads is that there's such a warmth, and I think there's a really important message for kids and adults, right? Because we're always, even as grownups, trying to find our own lane, that you can compete with people, but you can complement and help each other rise. Can you talk about that? Because that seemed to me a very subtle note in the book that is not what I've normally read about the world of ballet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing that, thank you for saying that. That's really, what I wanted to get across, and without, having it being shoved in your face. But I think that you learn so much from being outside of your bubble, and you learn so much from seeing people who come from different experiences and different cultures and different backgrounds. And I really wanted to highlight that, a lot of, when you think about sports, most people in a sport are competing against another team to win something. And though ballet is very athletic, that's not what we're doing. A lot of the competition, I think, is within yourself, and striving to be the best you can be when you're dealing with, your body as your instrument, which is so unpredictable. It doesn't matter how much you train it, from one day to the next, you're going to wake up and you're going to be in a completely different place and have to go from there and learn to adjust. And so I think there's so much beauty in that discipline and in that fight and perseverance that you learn by being a part of an art form that's so unique like ballet. But in this story, it's based on my life. So the young dancer on the cover is a young Misty. And as a biracial girl, she's stepping into ballet class for the very first time. So that's the journey that you take with her. And you witness her meeting her best friend, who was my best friend growing up, Catalina Maese, who was is a Mexican-American girl, very different experience growing up than I had. And we just kind of bonded, and we were very different dancers, but we built strengths based on, each other's strengths, and that support that so many people don't get to witness, when they're just in the audience or from what they see on TV and in films. But, the girls in a professional company, and the guys, of course, as well, but we're like this group of sisters bonded together on the stage, supporting one another. In the corps de ballet, there can be up to 32 girls along the sides that frame the dancers in the center. And we all breathe in unison, and we dance together, and we'll all be in pain together on the stage. And it's really a beautiful experience, I feel, the ballet world, of camaraderie, and just kind of reaching your goals together.
It's great. I mean, I think that's something that students and teachers and kids are going to really love about this book, and I'm sure I'm already
Thank
loving about it.
you.
One of the other things that I love, just having watched the ballet and gone for so long, is the way that the ballet makes fairy tales come to life. So can you talk
Mhm.
a little bit about how you chose Coppélia? Did I say it right?
Yes, yes, you
For the story?
did.
Whenever it's so funny, reading the book reminded me of holding a ballet program, and I'm like, I have no
Oh.
idea how to pronounce this, but I'm sure it's going to be beautiful.
I think there's something that's really beautiful about educating younger people without having to kind of like spell things out. And I think it also empowers young people to take the initiative and learn by really just like digging a little deeper. And so there's a story within a story. So I wanted to, this is a series, so there will be other ballets that are introduced, but I wanted to be able to introduce a ballet to this audience, that's something that they may not know, that's not your typical ballet that you might go see like the Nutcracker or Swan Lake. And so Coppélia I chose because it's such a rich and layered and colorful ballet and story, but at the same time, most ballets end in tragedy, and this one doesn't. And I thought it would be a beautiful story to share with kids.
Yes.
Um, so with this story, it's there's a lot of humor and there's a light romance, but and we don't go into detail within the story, but there's a beautiful kind of sisterhood with the lead girl. Swanilda is her name, and her little group of friends that are a little bit devious, and they sneak into this toy shop and kind of mess around with the old toy maker, crazy old toy maker. But it's really just a beautiful story within the story that, again, shares just a beautiful and light, relationships and the richness of being able to tell a story through movement and through your body.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. And it's so funny because that's where I see the writer in you coming out so much, because the story within the story is what we're always trying to do when we write.
Yeah.
So it's so great. I mean, I guess it's also about the parallel arts. Reading the
Yes.
book and seeing the Misty character perform, it made me realize how much I missed being in theaters.
Oh.
And so I wanted to know if you could just talk a little bit about this moment and what it's been like for you as a dancer and for other dancers, and are we kind of turning to mediums like books and films to kind of experience what we can't experience live right now?
Yeah, it's really difficult, as our livelihood as classical dancers is being in the theater. And I think that the beauty, though, is that dancers in particular, really, I think, can adapt and adjust to so many different environments, and more so than I think we might realize. And this is really, I think, a test for the arts world, to show that this is an opportunity for us to learn so much about where we were before this pandemic, as an art form, where we were, and what that term theater really means at this point. I think in terms of ballet, uh, we're ready to change what theater is. And I think that these big institutions have just excluded so many communities. And right now, during the pandemic, this is really an opportunity for us to have a virtual presence and really take the time to interact with so many communities from all over the world and engage with them and get them interested. And not that it will replace live theater, nothing can, but it'll bring in a new audience that's more diverse. And I think that's what we've been attempting to do, or a lot of companies saying that's what they're doing, but this is a real opportunity for us to do it. But dancers are still creating, and I think that books, of course, are always such a huge inspiration, for that creative inspiration or outlet. For me, music is a huge one as well. That's the first thing that kind of ignites what happens with my body, no matter what role I'm playing or what's being created, as well as cooking. There's just so many artistic things that we can draw from as artists, I think, to keep ourselves going and motivated.
That's amazing. I want to encourage people to drop questions into the chat. Misty will definitely be answering
Yes.
some questions. And because this is a book event, I wanted to ask you about what are some of your favorite books, either recent or past. And then I'll go into some of the audience questions.
Yes. Well, I just finished Mariah Carey's memoir. That was really exciting. She's been a big inspiration for me, being a woman of color, being a biracial woman. There was not a lot of that representation available to me when I was a young girl. And I remember being 7 years old when her debut album came out in 1990, 7.5, 8 years old. And I remember it was the first time, and I wasn't aware of it in that moment. It was many years later that I was like, why am I so obsessed with this woman? And it was the fact that she was talented and she was beautiful and she had all of these amazing opportunities, and she just seemed like otherworldly in my eyes. And her music also motivated me to dance for the first time and choreograph. But to see myself represented at that level as a biracial woman, that had never happened before. And I think that that's what makes me even more aware of, the power that I hold by having a presence in a world that doesn't often have diversity. So it's all of that to say, I just finished her book and it was really amazing. Another perspective, Trevor Noah's Born a Crime was a book that I really enjoyed, and such a different perspective of being biracial and from another country, and the struggles he had that are so different from mine or from Mariah's. Another book that I often say that I continue to go back to is The Power of Now. I think that's something that I'll take like 5 years off and then pick it up again, and it'll be like it's the first time I'm reading it, just having different life experiences and recognizing different things I can learn.
That's the Eckhart Tolle, right?
Yes, Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah,
Yes.
I feel the same way. I mean, I think the first time I picked it up, I was in my 20s and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, me
I was
too.
like, honestly, I felt like so much of it went over my head. And then I picked up, I was like, oh, I get a little more. And
I get it. Yeah.
so that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I have some questions from the audience.
Okay.
And Ingrid asks, what was it like to be the first Black principal dancer?
Oh, it took me, and this sounds like dramatic, but it took me more than 5 years before I think it really hit me. Yeah, I mean, well, not more, because I just approached my 5th anniversary actually this past spring. And, it's just never, I feel like all the work that I've been doing, yes, I've always wanted to be a principal dancer. Um, but the work was so much bigger to me that I was putting in that it stopped becoming about that. But in the end, I know what that title means for our community as Black people, and what it represents within the ballet world, and that someone needed to hold that title, I think, to set a new standard for what a ballet dancer can be and look like. But it is surreal. I feel like it was finally years and years of hard work from generations of Black women and Black men who paved the path for me to be in a position that I am in. So I always felt like it was just kind of this magical thing where I was carrying all of these people with me. And I think that made it a little bit easier for me to accept how major it was.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think when I wrote the book about Shirley Chisholm, she made that run for presidency in 1972, first Black person to make a credible
Yep.
run. And of course, she lost, but she also won so
Right.
many delegates. And one of the things that I loved writing about it was that not some races are relays, that you only have to
Mhm.
run as far as you can, and the next person will keep running. So in that way,
Absolutely.
thinking about the people coming, can you tell us a little bit about some of the people who kind of ran the relay before you became that principal ballet
Yeah.
dancer?
It's so true, everything you just said, and so beautifully said. Um, I'm actually, before Bunheads was even officially released, I'm already like really in the process of my next book, which is it's really focused on the Black ballerina history, and the fact that we don't have anything that's concrete like that. For the youth to be able to open up a book and learn about Black ballerinas, that are next to Natalia McCarva and Gelsey Kirkland and Mikhail Baryshnik, like all of these dancers who people know, and they know their history. But of course, there's Raven Wilkinson, as I've mentioned before, Virginia Johnson, who is a principal ballerina with the Dance Theater of Harlem. There's Nora Kimball, that so many people don't know her history, but she was a soloist with American Ballet Theater in the 80s, I believe, which most people assumed I was the first Black soloist before I was promoted to principal dancer. But I really feel like it's my responsibility at this point, with the reach I have and the platforms I have and the voice that I have, to be able to tell their stories and give them the respect that I don't think that they've gotten.
I mean, I'm excited for that. I love history, and I feel like part of the reason why we read, we're starting to get so many questions, so I'll jump back into them, even though I have questions of my own. So Lindsay writes that her daughter Sienna is 8 years old, and she's watching right now. And Sienna would love to know what advice you have for young girls starting out in ballet.
I think right now, not just right now, but all the time, but have fun. I think that we get so caught up in there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of discipline and structure, but it's also, I think, remembering the joy of what it is we're doing. We're learning a technique so that we have the tools and the vocabulary to tell a story through movement and through dance. So I think that when you kind of look at it in those terms, then you really can see the bigger picture. But I think it's important to focus on you and not to get caught up in what other people are doing. Of course, you can step back and learn from watching others, but not to compare yourself to other people. No one's going to dance like you. No one's going to look exactly like you. So it's really just about being your best self.
I love that. It's interesting because that kind of dovetails with a question that Jolie has, that she says, what can you tell new dancers who are a little nervous about making mistakes and trying something new?
It's the most powerful thing you can do, is step into something new that's outside of your comfort zone. A lot of adults can't muster up the courage to do it, and it will only make you a stronger person. It'll just expand your horizons so much. But I really just think that it's just a beautiful thing to be a part of, and to recognize that it's not even just about being the best ballet dancer, but knowing that by just being a part of this art form, you're going to develop tools that are going to take you so many places. No matter what you go on to do in life, you're going to be a more rich, fuller person because you've been a part of this.
I love that. And I think that dovetails with a question that someone asked about your teaching. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about your master class, which I'm kind of excited to check out. And I would love to know what people are saying about your master class, both dancers who are watching it and non-dancers. Because I feel like you said, there's so many lessons that apply to a lot of different parts of your life.
I think both dancers and non-dancers will be shocked if they haven't seen it, because it's not what you would think. It's not 10 lessons of me teaching you how to do the ballet technique. Yes, I've taught ballet classes before, but I wouldn't call myself a teacher in that way. So it really, what Masterclass has done is allowed for so many artists to share their experiences, which makes it so much more of a personal teaching, because it's even more, it's an even bigger wealth of knowledge to have walked so many different walks of your career in life and experienced so many things. So though I do touch on things with the ballet technique that are pretty basic for people who don't know ballet to understand and follow, but it's sharing my ups and downs and obstacles, a bit of my childhood, what it is to perform, and how I get into the mindset and how I stay focused and present on stage, what it is to work with a partner, what it is to approach acting and different roles on stage. But I feel like I've gotten a lot of incredible feedback from people that, again, thought, why am I approaching this when I have no interest? I'm not ever going to probably take a ballet class. And it, I think, really changed their minds and really just allowed them to see like the humanity and the athlete and the artist within the ballet world.
That's great. I'm excited to check it out. Twilia had a question about what can you share with young dancers and readers of books like Bunhead about the importance of self-care?
Yeah, I think that it's one of the biggest lessons I've learned is the power that you hold when you surround yourself with power, when you are open to having a strong, loving support system around you, how much more you can do, how much more you can grow. It's like having this security and safety net and being protected because you know that these people are coming from a good place. So you can be open and you can be vulnerable. And that's where you really start to grow and learn, is when you're in that place. That's just been my experiences of having amazing support around me. I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have it.
That's great. And we have another question. I'm trying to choose. There's so many questions.
I know, it's a lot of pressure.
A few more questions. So if you have a question, please drop it in the chat. Lenore has a question, which is, when did you find the time to write? And will you eventually lead a ballet company?
Ooh. Writing is something that I don't have to think about finding time to do. If something pops into my head, and I don't love it as much as how I used to do it, I'm trying to get back to actually writing in a notepad or in a journal. But I do a lot of just kind of journaling and taking notes in my phone. But whenever something comes to me and I want to be able to reflect on it or remember it or would process it, I find the time to write. I just always have something near me, because I think it's so important to be able to get out those internal thoughts that you have in your mind and not kind of bottle things up. Will I ever run a dance company? I can say pretty wholeheartedly at this point, no. I think that it takes such a special and unique person to be a teacher, to run a company, to make that type of commitment to a very large group of people. And I see myself doing so many things, and I don't think I would be able to do all of those things, because to commit to running a company as an artistic director or even being a teacher is really a full-time job that I would want to give my full self to. And I just see so many things in my future to be fulfilled artistically and just be able to give back in so many ways. So, but I never say no, because I never imagined I'd be an author.
Right. So who knows, right?
Who knows?
Yes. One of my favorite spreads in the Bunheads picture book is that there's this moment when the young Misty character is so excited she can't sleep before the audition.
Oh, I love that image.
And, it's so funny.
I love it. I'm like, I'm going to find it. It's right here.
You have to find it and show it. She's in her bed and she's like wide awake. And I thought it was great because it's like any creative person. I mean, I have moments when I'm so excited to write that I'm lying in bed and I just can't wait to get up. And so I wanted to ask you, do you still have those moments in your career where you're so excited that you can't sleep? And can you talk about
it? Well, first of all, I'm so grateful for Setor Fiagibe, who is the illustrator who brought I mean, you don't even have to be able to read or read the words, and it comes through so strong and clear just from the illustrations. And that's one of my favorites. And it really captures what that feels like. But as a dancer, I think that we can all say that especially when you're gearing up for a performance, you're learning new choreography, or you're just rehearsing something over and over again. It's just, you'll lay in bed for hours and the choreo, you just can't get it out of your head. It's just like choreography swirling around and you're just like, "Lo, let me go to sleep." But it's also just really exciting. And especially at that age, I remember it so vividly like that. And that picture just really, really captures what that felt like.
That's amazing. Um, okay, we have a question from Holly, and she wants to know, how do you keep your dance body over this year or just in general? And you also did a book about that as well. You
Yeah,
have a
Ballerina
book.
Body.
Yes.
It's it's tough the older you get. I just turned 38 and and I haven't been as physical. You know, I've in Ballerina Body I talk a lot about you know, that it's really about making a life, you know, decision to you know, just to change the way you take care of yourself, and that it's not about dieting, and for me it's not about changing the way I eat, whether I'm in season or I'm on vacation. I pretty much just eat the same all of the time. You know, things that I really enjoy in moderation, and just eating healthy. But it's been difficult, you know, in this time. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say, you know, oh, it's, you know, everything's perfect when you're a ballerina and I just wake up like this. No, it's a lot of, it's a lot of hard work. And I've, you know, not been able to dance as much, clearly, without, you know, studios being open. And you know, I can try and do as much as I can like in my house, but to keep up the training that we need to at the level that we need to maintain, it's just not possible if you're not really in a ballet studio with a proper floor for you to dance on point and for you to jump. But I also was dealing with a back injury right before we went into quarantine, so I spent the first, I don't know, 4 months healing from that. So I was really inactive. Um, so I've got a ways to go before I'm in the shape I need to be in to actually be performing on a stage. But I'm allowing myself to, you know, really take my time and be nice to my body.
That's great. Um, I think we have a couple more questions. Both Efren and Liz want to know what it was like to work with Prince.
Hmm. No one can compare. um, it was it was a time in my life and career where I really needed someone to kind of jolt me. You know, I had gotten to a point of being a soloist at ABT. You know, I had some support, but I felt like it was true will and grit that got me there. And then it got to a place where I was like, I just don't know that I would ever go beyond this. You know, I started to doubt myself and think like, why me? What makes me more special than any other Black woman who's come through this company? And why weren't they promoted to principal dancer? And I needed someone like Prince that I respected as an artist, that was going to stand behind me and push me to be myself and to own what it is to be different and unique in certain environments. And if I could learn that from anyone, it certainly was Prince, owning his power and his uniqueness and not being afraid to stand up for the things he believed in. But beyond all of the lessons, performing with him was just an unbelievable experience. You know, I spent hours on end with him, you know, his incredible artistic mind and the ideas that he had. And even though he was not a ballet dancer, he certainly coached me like he was one. And, you know, just being able to get to know the man and the artist was a huge, huge blessing in my life. And I wouldn't be the artist I am without him.
That's amazing. You know, one of the things you've talked about is ballet dancers having resilience and strength. And Jennifer Garcia Russell wants to know, mentally, how do you overcome injuries? And I guess I just would add to that, is what lessons of resilience as a ballet dancer would you give to people who are just trying to be strong during this year of this pandemic?
Mhm. I think remembering to trust yourself and your instincts and to know that the human body is really incredible. I was saying before that I think dancers, and it's not just dancers that I was about to say, that as human beings, thinking about this time and that we really do adapt very quickly and more easily than we give ourselves credit for. And I think that if we look back 4 months ago, that we didn't think we'd probably be able to get through as we have already in this time, and that we do adjust and learn to create a new normal for ourselves. And I think when it comes to injuries, it's kind of a similar thing, that you just have to be patient, but your body will adjust and adapt and it will heal, but you have to respect it and you have to give it time and you have to nurture it and you have to be nice to it. And I think that's something that I learned so much with every injury that I have, even more so than, just dancing every day. You learn so much about your body. You learn so much about being patient with yourself. And I don't regret any of the injuries that I've experienced, even the really severe ones.
Wow, that's amazing. There's so much mental toughness. I think we have time for two more questions. And Mindy asks, what is the greatest gift that the art of ballet has given to you?
It's taught me how to truly love and be open to love. It's taught me what it is to have empathy and sympathy. It's really, I think, just opened up all of my senses and made me a more vulnerable person, but also an incredibly strong person in every way.
Great. Okay, I'll ask you a last question. I know
Okay.
that you love to cook and that you love to travel. Is there a place that you're missing or a meal that you're longing to have somewhere? As a last
Oh,
question.
I love to travel the world, not only for work, but with my husband as well. Like, we both just love to travel and really relax. But I do miss traveling abroad and performing. There are theaters like Teatro Cologne in Milan, where you're just surrounded and just entranced in art in so many ways, whether it's through the food or through the wine and the people and the fashion. I would say that I miss like that whole area outside of the theater in Milan and the fresh pasta and the beautiful lights and architecture. And I would say I can't wait to go back to that.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Misty Copeland, the author of the brand new book, Bunheads. It's been so
Thank
great to talk to you. And
you
your
as
book is
well.
available at Barnes & Noble and independent bookstores everywhere. Congratulations.
Thank